I want you.
Oh, is that so? Because I got what the doctor ordered. Becky? Becky? You okay? So, you're falling in love with your therapist, or maybe you simply just want to f them. Regardless of your feelings, carnal or more loving in nature, I want to help you understand why. What's up, everybody? My name is John Burt. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and therapist extraordinaire. And welcome to another session with the Chocolate Therapist. In today's session, we're going to be covering why you're falling in love with your therapist, and also why you might want to have sex with them. So without further ado, let's get into today's session. There's a 100% chance that you will fall in love with your therapist. But the question is why? Well, that's why I'm here. So let me show you why. At the beginning of therapy, you don't really give a shit about your therapist.
Come on in.
As you, the client, have entered into therapy at a moment of intense distress. Most likely due to some type of relationship problem. We feel lonely, we just experienced a breakup, or maybe we're just in a shitty, unsatisfying relationship. Regardless of what it is, some serious shit has been popping off in our lives, and this life event has become so consuming, so rife with pain and anxiety, that a majority of our attention can only be focused on seeking some sort of relief from our current suffering. You okay? This causes us to enter into therapy with the impaired ability to fully be able to see and experience a therapist as a person, as we don't have room or space to give a fuck about the therapist's feelings. We already do that with everyone else in our lives, and it's time for our own needs to take center stage for once. And because of this, we enter into therapy seeing the therapist more as a tool than a person, with the motive of using this person to seek relief from our current suffering, rather than a person to encounter and relate to. The therapist must endure a one-sided relationship. But don't worry about us, because it's not destined to stay this way. Also, therapy by design is supposed to be a one-sided relationship, so don't feel too bad. One thing as a patient you should understand about us therapists is that we're like masochists. We get off on the idea of unrequited love. And this is because the person that we see in therapy needs it, but there's also a reason behind it. We use it as a tool to model what real love actually looks like. A therapist's love is unconditional. And what this means is that our client has grown used to their relationships eroding over time due to their own toxic behaviors, among other factors. But a therapist isn't scared off by such behaviors because we already have our needs met. This leaves us with the space to genuinely care about the personhood of you, our client. We're not entering into therapy trying to get our needs met by our clients, so we're better able to endure their shittiness. We therapists are interested in the you of our patients. And what I mean by this is that I'm obsessed with you as a person.
You got it, girl.
Your growth, your problems, your happiness, your humanity, even your stinking draws. I'm not just concerned with the current you who's all fucked up by your past traumas, betrayals, and abuse. I'm also excitedly hoping and waiting to meet the potential dormant you, hiding beneath all your craziness, that's waiting to come out when all the hard work of healing takes place. As the relationship continues, the person in therapy opens up to their therapist. They begin to share their darkest secrets, their sorrows, and all their crazy, intrusive, illicit thoughts. They open up about all the hard emotions people typically avoid sharing, like their shame, insecurities, and vanities. The person in therapy begins to trust their therapist and show them the real, raw version of themselves. And unbeknownst to the client, their relationship with their therapist has become one of the most intimate relationships they have ever experienced. Your therapist has seen you at your worst. Your depression, your sociopathy, your rebelliousness, your narcissism, your hostility, your insecurity, your judgmentalness, and your seductive manipulation.
Nope.
And with time, your relationship with your therapist has entered into a realm that not many, if any at all, of your relationships have ever entered. The therapist has become someone, often the only one, who really knows you. To tell an individual all one's darkest secrets and still be fully accepted by that person is enormously affirming. And the client starts to grasp that though they have had experiences with intense relationships in the past, they have never quite been in a relationship requiring them to trust fully, to examine all nuances of their feelings with another, to reveal all and hold nothing back. And to be able to do all this this while still receiving non-judgmental acceptance. It would seem that the more unlawful, shameful, dark, and ugly stuff that they reveal, the more they are rewarded. The client has fully exposed themselves to the therapist, and despite the therapist being a front row spectator to the client's craziness throughout the relationship, the love the therapist has for the client never erodes. In fact, one might say that the therapist cares more because of these traits, since they reflect how much the individual needs to be cared for. This unconditional way of receiving love can be jarring, especially when compared with the types of love you received in the past, with your previous understanding of love being defined by your toxic-ass relationships of the past, where you had to earn the love you received, and a lot of the time that love was earned by having to endure being mistreated, being taken advantage of, having to do things to prove your worth, and overall just being used and abused. Many of your relationships were defined by a love and caring that could be eroded away depending on how you act, with people who ultimately ceased to love you when you didn't behave in the ways they wanted you to behave. But in contrast, your therapist's love is defined by a genuine caring for the personhood of their client. They care about your growth, your happiness, and your humanity, with their aim being to bring all your inner potential into life.
Come on! You got it, girl!
And in order for that potential to be reached, so much has to be asked, so much has to be revealed, so much has to be understood, and so much has to be given that the therapeutic bond can become so strong that love arises. After hearing all that's involved in the client-therapist relationship, is there still any wonder why patients regularly develop feelings of love or sexual feelings towards their therapist? Given the extraordinary love and intimacy that happens between a therapist and their patient, it would be surprising if they didn't enter into each other's mind from time to time. And this is where problems can start to arise. For many individuals, this is the first time they've ever been exposed to such a rare and gratifying and delicious situation. A relationship where every utterance is examined with interest, every event of their past and present life is explored, and a relationship where they are nurtured, cared for, and unconditionally accepted, supported, and loved. Doesn't that sound like quite a beautiful thing once you think about it? And it's that beauty that can start to create confusion. Some individuals do not know how to respond to such generosity. What is one to do when receiving such a precious and valuable gift? What can they offer in return in the presence of such caring love?
I want you.
You guessed it right. For some people, the answer is sex. They believe all that they have to offer to their therapist is sex. For many individuals, but especially for women with low self-regard, there is a belief that the only real gift they have to offer in a relationship is a sexual one. Sex has become a commodity that they have depended upon in past relationships to keep men interested in them. And without offering it, they can only foresee a loss of interest by their partner.
No, I don't think I want to do that.
And feel that they are ultimately destined to be abandoned. Many are convinced that others' commitment to them is paper thin, and that those they are in relationship with will soon tire of them and dump them. You okay? These beliefs bleed into most of their relationships with the opposite sex, and their relationship with their therapist is of no exception to this rule. For women that have never experienced a relationship where they are genuinely cared for, experiencing a relationship where they are being seen and heard for the first time and feeling connected to and known in new intimate ways can be a jarring experience. So jarring because it's foreign to them. Physical intimacy has always been their only mode of relating to men, and when they are called on to evolve and adopt new ways of relating to men through their relationship with their male therapist, they can't, and struggle to find new approaches of reciprocating the love they are receiving. They can only see their therapist sexually, so they regress to old, comfortable, familiar ways of relating by trying to devolve this relationship that's inviting them to mature back into the sexual realm where they feel more comfortable. And that's because this individual only has a history of relating to others sexually, so it's of no surprise when this dynamic finds its way into the therapeutic relationship. So let's take a step back and break all this down. First, I'm sure there are some women out there saying, why are you singling out women? There are plenty of men out there that can only relate to women sexually and are also trying to bang their female therapists too. And you're right. The example I just explained is also applicable to men and their female therapists. The reason why I focus on women is because that's what I personally have the most experience with. And also, male therapists are much more likely to sleep with their female clients. Second, what's actually happening here? What do we call it when a client falls in love or develops sexual feelings towards their therapist? Or there's a name for it. It's called transference. But it's just not any transference. It's a transference of the erotic variety. So first, let's break down what transference is. Then we'll focus on erotic transference. One thing your therapist does in therapy is help you become more aware of your own craziness through something called transference. What's transference? Transference is the craziness you bring into therapy due to your past trauma. It causes you to project and misinterpret your therapist's actions, resulting in you entering into the relationship with your therapist in potentially unhealthy ways. When I say your craziness, that's my fancy way of saying neuroticism. Now, you're probably wondering, what's neuroticism? Well, let me show you some examples. Neuroticism is your hypersexuality that causes you to try to seduce your therapist. Your hypercompetitiveness and insecurity that causes you to want to challenge any insight your therapist gives you that's counter to how you imagine yourself. It's your hyperdependence that causes you to overly rely on your therapist to help you in ways that you need to figure out on your own. It's your emotional instability that causes you to lash out at your therapist when they call you out on your bullshit. And it's your manipulation that causes you to want to be dishonest and try to deceive and control your therapist's perception of you. Unbeknownst to you, these types of maladaptive behaviors are present in all your relationships and are in one way or another creating difficulty in your life and in your relationships with those around you. So it's a good thing that they emerge in your relationship with your therapist, because we can bring this information to your attention, helping you become more aware of your craziness so you can better address it. So, do us all a favor and go get some therapy, you crazy motherfucker. Now that we know what transference is, let's focus on a specific kind. Why do you want to fuck your therapist? It's because you're experiencing erotic transference. Erotic transference is the very common phenomenon that happens in therapy, especially with male therapists who are working with female patients. Erotic transference is when a client develops feelings of love towards their therapist. And a lot of the time, sexual fantasies can also accompany these feelings. So let's talk about how these feelings develop. First, we have your therapist. If they're any good, they'll be one of the healthiest relationships you will ever experience, meaning that they will have a lot of the traits that you are probably looking for in a romantic partner. Now let's also add the mental state you're in when you first enter into therapy. A lot of people who enter into therapy feel alone. They've kept troubling thoughts and feelings inside away from those around them. They've had awful things happen to them, and they haven't been able to share those feelings with anyone. They've had disastrous relationships with shitty men in the past, fathers that have come up short, boyfriends that have abused them, men that have used them sexually only to discard them soon after. They have a history of being sexualized and abandoned by every man that has meant something to them. And then they meet their loving male therapist. And for the first time in a long time, they take a risk and share everything with him. And they are met with a deliciously sweet situation. A relationship with a man where their every utterance is examined with interest. Every event of their past and present life is explored. And they're finally in a relationship where they are nurtured, cared for, unconditionally accepted, loved, and supported with an emotionally mature man who's able to hold space with and for them. It's quite a beautiful thing once you think about it. And me as a therapist understands this. Therapists understand that a lot of people who enter into therapy for the first time, they have been exposed to such a rare and gratifying relationship. But it's my job in this situation to keep my ego in check and not allow myself to get swept up in the same emotional high. Noticing that someone is starting to develop feelings towards you can be intoxicating. And as much as I'd like to think that someone I'm working with in therapy has succumbed to my irresistible charm and dashing good looks, I believe that the love they're feeling towards me generally belongs more to my role I'm occupying as their therapist, rather than me as a person. What I mean by this is that my clients falling in love with me is more for the role I'm fulfilling as their therapist. I'm helping them in a time of need. I've taken a deep interest in their life. I'm showing up for them, and we've built up an emotional intimacy where I'm providing them with the love, concern, and caring they need during their moment of distress. Given all this, it's not surprising that a person has developed strong feelings towards their therapist. It's the perfect setting for feelings of love to arise. So, now that we know all this, what can we do? Let's say you're currently in therapy, and you have feelings of love developing, or maybe you just have intense feelings of wanting to get down and dirty with your therapist. How are you going to go about handling these feelings? Well, the simple answer is just talk to your therapist about it.
I want you.
Talking to me? Now I can already hear some of you guys saying, John, you want me to tell my therapist I want to fuck them? Hell yeah, I do. And I get it. Believe me, I get it. I know it's going to feel awkward and maybe even a little cringy to open up to your therapist about wanting to bang them. But it's a good thing, not an unfortunate one, that these feelings have emerged in the therapeutic relationship. Since attraction to your therapist is to be expected and very common, said feelings of attraction should be expressed, explored, and understood by you and your therapist. I promise you, the experience will be illuminating. Yes, I know opening up to your therapist about your feelings towards them will be uncomfortable. But these types of deep exploratory conversations are absolutely essential in therapy and leads us to uncovering new insights about yourself. Like, for example, maybe you default your relationships towards men to only being sexual ones. Or maybe you think men won't find you interesting unless you have sex with them. Or lastly, sex is the only way you know how to show love or relate intimately with men. Whatever the reason may be, there's an endless number of directions this conversation can take. So who knows what this conversation will uncover? But the fact is that if any of these are the case, then these beliefs have in one way or another created difficulty in your life, specifically in your relationships with men. And it's a good thing, not unfortunate, that they have emerged in the therapeutic relationship. The hope is that in therapy, more ways of receiving and giving love can be explored, rather than just limiting love to only the sexual realm. Sex is not real relatedness, but only a caricature of an intimate relationship. And if this is how you're going about trying to relate to men in intimate ways, then your love life is always going to be a shell of its potential self. I think that the main problem when it comes to erotic transference in therapy is a therapist's ability to navigate the topic. If I'm a client in therapy, I'm probably worried about a couple of things happening if I was to open up to my therapist about my feelings towards them. Something like, my therapist might be a little bitch and can't handle the heat that comes with talking about my sexual feelings towards them, and he abandons me by ending our therapeutic relationship. Or, my therapist takes advantage of my sexual feelings and has sex with me. Or maybe that's what some of you guys are exactly hoping for. Or maybe there's some awkward sexual tension lingering in the room since you've disclosed your feelings, causing your therapist to change up his approach to your guys' relationship. With him now being on guard, a little defensive, and the charisma of your relationship taking a hit, and the therapy never being the same. I'm sure that there are other things that could happen, but these are the reasons that came to mind when thinking about why I would be afraid of telling my therapist I was attracted to them. And these fears are justified, because honestly, there's a lot of shitty therapists out there that might react this way. But don't let that hold you back, because this is also an opportunity that can be used as a test to build your trust between you and your therapist. If your therapist is any good, they will show up and have your back. It's your therapist's duty to respond appropriately when sexual feelings arise. And a good therapist will know that when worked through properly, no intense feelings of erotic transference is likely to persist for very long. All these dynamics should become part of the therapeutic dialogue. Since attraction to your therapist is to be expected, this phenomenon, like all other events in the therapeutic hour, should be explicitly addressed and understood. Because as I said before, a good therapist will understand that these beliefs have in one way or another created difficulty in your life. And it's a good thing, not unfortunate, that they emerge in the here and now of the therapeutic hour. So, let me help you out and talk about my personal experience as a therapist. When one of my people in therapy takes the plunge and reveals something particularly difficult to discuss, maybe because it's something particularly embarrassing, shameful, or in this case, sexual, then their disclosure helps us break significant new ground in both our therapeutic work and our relationship together. I've earned their trust, and this resulted in them taking a risk, revealing sensitive information to me. I make sure to treat such disclosure with tender love and care. But if the temperature's right, and I also have a decent read of my client, I might also make a joke if it's appropriate to cut the tension a little bit. This in turn helps me earn their trust more because I've treated their disclosure with love and care. Overall, I try to make it a point to comment on how much I appreciate their willingness to trust me, because I know it's not easy. I don't want to hype myself up, but that's my idea of what good therapy looks like. So if your therapist punishes you for such a revelation, then they simply suck and are a shitty therapist. Okay, maybe I'm being a little harsh on them. So let me rephrase that. If your therapist punishes you for such a disclosure, they still have some growing up to do. So please do anything but blame yourself. So, with all that being said, unfortunately, this is the end of today's session. Hopefully this video was helpful and you got something out of it. If you don't mind, please do all the little YouTube things like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next session. God bless. And also, male therapists are much more likely to sleep with their female clients. How's it going?
Did you sleep with a client?
No, Emily.
So you have personal experience with this shit.
Stop.
Did I just learn of an affair?
Shut up. So please do anything but blame yourself. Jesus Christ, I'm so tired. I'm done with this part. Thank God. Shit. Did you get my bald spot? Okay, Jesus Christ. I'm What if you walked into your therapist's office and he was like, "Oh, sit down."
Like I would leave immediately. Ew.
Okay. Alright, let me get my socks. This video isn't going to focus on the I'm sorry, this video isn't gonna focus. This video isn't gonna focus on the. Are you recording this?